Imagine yourself sick, and you and your family don't have any money to pay for whatever illness you may have, or maybe you're in the middle of a natural disaster or a military conflict with nothing but the clothes and the skin on your back. What are you going to do? Well, sadly, this is a large reality for a lot of people in the world today. Do you know that 1/3 of all the people in the world don't have access to basic health care? That means 2.6 billion people across the world do not have access to medical services, whether it's because it's not available or it's too expensive or whatever. These billions of people will have no one to turn to when disaster strikes because they have no money, or the government doesn't care about them, or just because of things out of their control. When deciding on what charity I wanted to write my speech about, I wanted to pick a charity that truly helps those that would not survive otherwise, a charity that actually saves lives. That's why I've decided to talk about the charity Médecins Sans Frontières, or maybe more commonly known to you as Doctors Without Borders. Today, I'd like to talk to you about some of these problems around the world and how Doctors Without Borders helps alleviate these issues and what you can do to help this organization. So, founded in 1971 by a small group of doctors, Médecins Sans Frontières, or MSF, is an international humanitarian medical non-governmental organization of French origin, best known for its projects in conflict zones and in areas affected by endemic diseases, according to the website's own FAQ. Their independence, impartiality, and neutrality are vital to their work because it allows them to offer aid to people based solely on need, irrespective of race, gender, or political affiliation. It's easy to write inspiring words that define an organization's mission, but it's much harder to put those principles into action. However, MSF does exactly that. There are conflicts going on all over the world right now, and MSF, spread as thin as it is, does its best to delegate volunteers to as many regions as possible. There's so many different heartbreaking stories I could tell you about, but there's one I wanted to share with you. Very recent, actually, from a nurse's blog. Her name was Vera Schmitz, and she was deployed in Ethiopia, Tigray, in December. And if you don't know, there's an armed conflict between the Ethiopian government and its people right now, which has led to one of the worst humanitarian crises in modern times. She's traveled to multiple different towns and villages across the region, and none of them had more than a couple basic necessities for their people. Here's the reality of the situation for almost every town and village she visited in Tigray. There's no food. A large portion of the population relied on governmental food aid even before the current crisis. Now, their last distribution was received in September, which was almost 4 months ago. They ration to 1 meal a day, and some can't even afford that. And it'll only get worse in time. Electricity was cut all over Tigray, which prevents any sort of communication coming in and out. And that also means that there's no water, because the water pumps in these areas function electrically. And most people have resorted to drinking from the local rivers, which has caused a high number of diarrhea, skin diseases, and other infections in the areas. No healthcare either, by the way, nothing. All the health centers are closed off, the staff have fled, and the health centers are either destroyed intentionally, looted, or just occupied by the military. It's nearly impossible to bring a patient to a hospital in these areas, and only God knows how many women, children, and wounded have died in their homes without having access to medical care. The people of Tigray are traumatized and under constant pressure, and MSF's work will almost never be done. The need for a fast, comprehensive, and proportionate humanitarian response is enormous. However, the international humanitarian community remains silent towards Tigray, sending no aid whatsoever to these areas, or if any, for a very brief time. So how is this independent, non-profit organization able to provide such treatments to patients at little to no cost for them? The organization isn't founded by any government or country at all. It's privately owned and survives merely off of corporation sponsorships and donations it receives. MSF would be ever grateful to any of us who could donate to them, because it allows them to take action to save the lives of those in immediate danger. I ask you to think about the story I just told you, and to remember that this is one story in one region in one country. There's so much struggle and anguish around the world, but if you donate any amount of money to MSF, you can make a difference. You can make these people's lives much, much easier. You can put a person in a home or a shelter. You can treat a sick person who can't afford it. You can reunite families together who have been separated due to conflict. You can send a person the gift of a meal, medicine, or even another day of life. So I ask of you to donate any amount you can, it doesn't matter how much, to Médecins Sans Frontières, and they will put 100% of it towards helping those who need it the most. Thank you.